Hello and welcome to Creative Sewing. I'm Aideen.Cross and I'm delighted to be able to bring you this February issue of our Made to Love series of online tutorials in association with Healthy Ireland and the Kildare County Council. Each month we've been bringing to you crafts, seasonal crafts, the online tutorials and the craft packs of course as well. They're proven very popular. We had this month, February, we have our Valentine theme, and what better than making some nice cards to send to people, the ones we love. And these ones here are embroidered silk cards. Now we can have them on our postcard or just as an ordinary card if you like either. And of course their idea of those is actually based on the World War I silk cards, as they would call them. It was the refugees ladies who would have made them for the soldiers in World War I to send back to their loved ones back home. And certainly this is a lovely way of sending love to someone as well. Design and create your own, whatever way you would like to do it, and send it to someone did you care for. And let's start the tutorial then. I hope you enjoy it. Now, starting off with our craft pack that we received, you'll either receive the one for the rose and the writing from our home to yours, or the Made with Love and the flower, embroidered flower. Now both are similar, I suppose, really, and in that you'll have your embroidery threads. Now you can use ordinary threads because we're going to be splitting these threads because they are quite thick and the organza is very fine. Of course you have your bond-to-bed strips, I'll show you those now in a few minutes, and your little bits of thread there as well. Okay, and your Made to Love little badge then as well, you can put whatever you want, and you have your little piece of silk. First thing we'll do, literally just have a look at this here. We have our layout here. I'm going to get you to get the card and fold it over in half, okay, and just get a little bit of a pinch on it, and then with your paper scissors then, or if you have a blade, then you could do that either. I'm just going to cut down along the edge of that, so we end up with two. Now one's for the back and one's for the front, or you can use, of course, as I said to you before, you can always put your piece onto your on postcard either if you don't want to use the back, and you can actually cut another piece out of that and make two. So I'm going to leave that to one side just for now, and as I have here on the display here, 1.5 centimetre all the way around. So let's just pencil that in, okay, all the way around. And that's just enough to kind of give us a little bit of a border on the edge of the card. Now, having that done, we get our paper scissors again, and now if you had a blade and a ruler, you could cut that out, and I just haven't got one at the moment. What I'm doing is actually then just cutting the hole in the centre, and what I'll do is cut to the corners then, okay, with just a quite little snip, okay, on each corner. And when I have that done, then just run your scissors into the edge, and you want quite a fine scissors if you can, and just cut each section. Now, so that's your little frame done out, okay, on that. Now what we need to do now is actually put our silk on. So that's where your bond-to-web comes in. Now you have, on the bond-to-web, you have a rough side, which is the glue, and the paper side, which is just the backing of it. Now we have to look, if you can see where you put the pencil marks on that, face that up, and we'll put the glue on that side, okay? Now up on your iron, and just with the glue side down, feeling again, just run the iron, moderate iron, not too hot, and no steam, and just bringing it down to the end, and again just turning your corner with the little pieces. Now that's your piece all on there now at the moment. Now we just need to take off our paper, just run around pulling the paper off. Now, paper's off and the glue is on this side. So glue side up on the ironing board and just put your silk on top. Okay, and again, if you have a very moderate iron, not too hot, and now you can use a little bit of steam. Now, and that should stick it on for you, and it'll just give it a bit of a hold before we stitch it. Okay, so we can trim that up to the edge of your card. Now, I like to go around that now with a nice fancy stitch. Okay, so you choose what fancy stitch you want. Now, I'm choosing kind of like a feathered stitch just to go along the edge here, along near the organza edge, okay? Because we'll be putting another one then on the outer edge as well, okay? And so it's just the inner one we're doing now. And I'm doing a bit of super stitch, kind of like, or like a back stitch. I'm sure most of the machines would do. If you don't have a super stitch or back stitch, even turn your stitch down to a number 1.5 or 2, or maybe even a 1. Seeing how, if you want to try it out beforehand, just to get a nice tight stitch on it. Now that's it all done. Just cutting off your threads. Okay, so that's it, ready to go there now with your design of whatever you choose to do. Okay, so I have here on the page here a few designs just done out. I've done some writing out. Look, you can do your own. I've done the flower, of course, from the other one, from our home to yours, made with love. Make sure it actually does fit into whatever you're trying to do with it. Again, I have a few of, this is your other flower from here. And what you'll actually do if you did want to do exactly the same flowers, you actually put your organza over it, and with your pencil then trace it, or maybe you'd have your own design too, you know, for that. But on this particular one, I'm actually going to do the same one again, just to kind of give you an idea of what I had done and reproduce it, you know. But any of these can be done with similar stitches, you know, and you can choose whatever stitch you want to do. Have a look. I suppose the daisies chain stitch for something like this, quite simple and quite easy. You can use them on the petals. It shows you there what to do with it. Again, you can do it on the little leaves as well. What I'm doing here now is the satin stitch on the flower, on this flower, and you could do a satin stitch again on this flower, or if you want to just do a little back stitch or run stitch around the edge and just into different shades, the green for the stem and the blue, like the bluebells or whatever. This one here actually is done with a, you know, you can do it with a running stitch or a stem stitch and going up into the leaves, and the little dots actually are quite easily done, and there'll be just a little French knots in a nice choosing a colour that you want to do it in, and it's actually quite effective when it is done as well, and quite simply done. And again, this one here is lovely too, and can be done in the chain stitch going around, or even the running stitch, and even do it in different shades into the centre, and then doing your little French knot in the very tip as well. And then trace over, which is putting your piece on top and then just getting the border on, and then just with your pencil then just tracing. Now it's all traced over there now. That's our message, and of course you can put in your own message, it'd be lovely too. Do the Made with Love one on it as well. Okay, so we have 2 there on that, and we're ready to go with our needle and thread. So you will need quite a thick top needle, I suppose, if you are going for a thicker thread, but I'm not going for too thick of a thread on any of these now, because as I said before, it is quite a thin fabric, so literally about that length. We'll split it and have 2 strands. Okay, so there it is, pulling out with 2 strands. Just be careful. That's it, and now we have it there. That's your other piece. So we have 2 strands there in that. Now, as I said, if you had another colour at home, if you just wanted to use 2 strands of ordinary sewing thread, look, it would work quite as well too. Now, the thing about starting on something as fine as this, we're not going to do a knot on it. We're going to work it in afterwards, okay? So we're going to leave literally single thread, not double, not folded over in half, as you can see there like that. So it's single, and be careful not to pull it at the end. And we're just going to literally shade out on the outside, just on that, with a little satin stitch, okay, a long and short satin stitch. So you're looking at that at your picture there on that, okay, and literally gauging it from there. So we'll start on any of the petals there just along one side, pulling up from the bottom and leaving about an inch or so then or more, maybe even 2 inches then on the back side, and just holding it with your finger. And then in on the top, so we're going long and short, so that's a long one right out to the end, and then halfway down along that then I've come back, okay, back up to the top of the stem and then down longer then again this time. So long and short, long and short. I have the picture there in your cards there of what it is. So continue with that long and short the whole way along. Every second one long and short. Now you'll be aiming your embroidery back into the centre, a little tighter in the centre, of course it's more fanned out on the outside, so just be careful just to kind of angle it a little bit tighter in the centre, and then just work your way down to give a long stem in the, when you're finished that particular petal, go right down to the end near the centre of the flower, okay, to give a good definition, and then back up with your short ones, and then you're doing long and short again here. Now if you think that's too thin, you know, keep it as tight as you want to it. Now as I say again, I have just 2 strands in this. I think it's easier to work with. If you prefer it quite thick, go with maybe 3 or 4. You'll have to experiment a little bit with it to see what suits you and see what sort of finish you want on it, okay? But your stitches on this, as I say, are the long and short stitches then going up and down into each petal. Now I'm just finished my thread there. So what I'm going to do is just bring it to the back and find a tiny little spot just to do a couple of little back stitches, and going back to your thread, your piece that you had. As I say, it's 2 layers of that embroidered thread, no knot on the end, and then making sure you're on the right side because it's hard to know the right and the wrong side sometimes as well, so just making sure you're on your right side when you're starting again. Again, you're starting, leave a couple of inches, and again the long and the short stitches, keeping it tighter in towards the centre as the petal is wider at the top, okay? Now we're just finished there at that. So what we can do now then is, as I say, go to the back then. I'm just going to do one more stitch there over that. Okay, so that's it there so far. So, and a little stitch there, wrapping it round. Actually going to do the tops of the other little small ones. Now I'm noticing actually the pencil I used on that now is quite a dark. Now while it was great using a dark pencil, but it is coming off a little bit in my hand. I don't want it to dry, so don't use something too dark. Just as a note of caution. Again, leave your 2 inches there and do the very same long and short stitches then. Start from the top back in. Now this is very small, so there won't be a lot of stitches in it. Now literally that's it, and again just finishing off with a couple of little stitches. Just remembering every time you start that you're actually on the right side. So long and short stitches again, just the little satin stitch with a long and short version, just because we're going to use the bit of white, which I think is nice and bright. Oh, that's that one all done. Again, just a tiny little back stitch at the back, a couple of little stitches. Okay. So that's your pink all done there at that. So now what we're looking to get is a little bit of white, about 60 centimeters long. Cut that off, and then again splice it then, and again I'm going to use just 2 little strands of this, threading that up through your needle, and again I'm using a single thread with the 2 little layers in it. Again, I'll start with the larger one coming up from the bottom and at the side of one of the little petals coming up, and leaving our 2-inch thread on the back, then not having a knot in it, and just holding it then, and we're doing the long and filling in the long and short gaps now. That's exactly what we're doing. Okay, so where you've done short and long, you're heading a little bit further into it. Okay, watching your what you have here on the long and short on your picture as well, just for reference. Okay, so just filling in the gaps, long and short, into the center of the flower, all the way around. Now it's beginning to get a little bit brighter there in the center there, filling in the gaps, as I say, long and short stitches. Now, long and short stitches all the way around onto your back, then to where you started. Okay, and if you think there was an odd bit that needed a little bit more filling in, just take the advantage now just to fill it in where you need it. Okay, so that's that done, and then again to the back then, and just finding a tiny little bit to do a stitch. And of course you have your piece where you started there as well, and you could just tie that in a bit of a knot there, threading it up on the needle and making sure you're on the right side again. Okay, because it is hard to keep remembering which side. Starting off, leaving your 2 inches on the underneath part with a single thread, and just again filling in the long and short, and just wrapping it round then with a little bit of a knot then on the now. So we'll just go again then with the other one, and that'll be then all our white done. So making sure you're on your right side again, leaving your 2 inches on the underneath part, single thread with the two strands of the embroidery. That's what it is, 2 strands of the embroidery with a single thread, not doubling it up then. Finishing off then just with a slight little back stitch. Okay, so that's that part done and all our little flower done, except we have a little centers to do now as well. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of little French knots in the center. Okay, and we might just do them actually just on the main flower itself, and we'll go with thicker thread on this. So I'm threading it all up on this one, again coming up from the bottom, leaving our 2 inches on the underneath. Okay, and then for our French knot then, going back down very close to where we came up and across. Okay, barely catching a little thread, winding round then with this thread. Okay, with the thread that you're coming up with, not the one off your needle. Okay, wrapping around 3 times on the very top of it, hold it with your finger and push it through. Just take a little bit of persuasion, holding the little curls that what you're after putting in. All right, and you have all your little curls there, and you're stabbing down at the side of that again. Okay, so stabbing down at the side of that, that leaves a little knot in it. Okay, so we'll do 3 of them. Okay, so up again and another little part. So coming up again, where you've come up then, just literally go across, and you're winding round with this strand. Okay, the strand you're coming up with. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, sorry, on round there, and holding it tight and just jiggling it, letting it go through, pulling it out. Okay, and just seeing that you have all the pieces there, and stab down then at the side. Okay, of that. So you're stabbing down there at the side of that, and then that's it. Then just tying off then a little bit of back stitch, and you do a little back stitch over that thread from the beginning there as well. Just so there's your little bit of green, and this is going to do a stem stitch. So again, not too long of a piece. Cut the piece then about 60 centimeters long, and this one we might actually do just 3 strands, 3 and 3. So again, threading it through your needle. You want a needle with a good eye in it. Again, the stem stitch, starting in a little stitch from the end. Okay, coming up and leaving your ends, the 2 inches there at the end, or 5 centimeters there. Just, I don't want to do a big knot on it. So back in, it'll show you here on the corner of this one how to do your stem stitch. But I'm just showing you here, back in here and on, but like a back stitch. Okay, but you're kind of coming in at the side of it then. Okay, so you're kind of like a back stitch, but you're actually going at the side of it as well. Okay, so you're kind of layering up as you go along, as opposed to one end to end. Okay, so just, that's your first stitch, and then you're layering up at the side, back and forward, and just landing back at the side, just to give that stem effect at the side as opposed to back into the knot. Okay, halfway down on your stitch, then you're back in, halfway down, it's in a bit, back a bit. Just try and keep your stitches nice and even. Okay, see, it's equally the same as a back stitch, only you're not going back into that hole, you're going back further, halfway down along that stitch. So you have your stitch there, and you're stabbing halfway down that again, okay, and then going on further a stitch, on a stitch as well, further where your thread comes out, halfway down along where that last stitch is, and then on a stitch. Okay, now when you get to the end, then we're just going to do the little stem stitches again, just feather it back in, fan it out, just the end of that, those little buds are green, so feather it back into where your white is, just kind of like a little fan, kind of a couple of little stitches back into a point until the end, and then again just a little feathered effect at the end of those little buds there, just in and out to a point there, in through there, just in and out through the white, looping them around a couple of times just to secure it before cutting it off. So that's your whole little flower done now, and it's just time just to do the Made with Love then. I'm going to go for a little bit of pink, a little fresher colour then on this one, about 60 centimetres, because we're going to thin this one out, because we certainly don't want it too thick, because it's a very, very fine writing, and we're literally only going to be doing a running stitch on this. So again, 2 strands of the embroidery thread, a little running stitch, so it's just in and out all the way around. Again, we'll kind of do it like a joint writing, even though I haven't done, we'll try on each word, we'll kind of bring it over slightly. If you see, I have slightly brought over at the back there a little bit from one to the other, but then I changed it then for love then on it. But it is, you will see it quite distinctly coming through the back as well, so any little stitches at all is going to be seen. So keep the stitches small if you can, and stabbing up and down, in and out, and pull it out. It's tiny little stitches then the whole way along, okay, and it's literally only a little running stitch all the way along there. So just take your time at it. Now you could do the writing a little bit bigger, certainly, you know, if you want it, but you can fill in the gaps, as I say, just keep the stitches very, very small. I'm on to the width now, and I'm just at the eye coming up here now, and again we'll probably just do another little French knot for the top of the eye, so coming up from the bottom across, again you come up from the bottom and just across, little tiny stitch, and like what we did a few minutes ago, wrap it around 3 or maybe 4 times if you want, and then just gently bring your needle through, holding all your gathers with your nail or your finger, and then stabbing back down at the side, and that's your little knot at the top there for the top of the eye. Again, going down, a bit like giant writing, going back down with your thread there to the bottom of the T now, and again the small little running stitches up along there, and like that. If you feel that you've missed gaps when you're coming back down, then fill in the gaps a little bit then as well if you want. Thread. Now we're starting with the love, starting at the top here, leaving your little thread, okay, at the back, 5 centimeters, just loose. We'll tidy that up, and a running stitch down along it. We're nearly there now. It is a little tedious, and take your time. So when you have it this far, it's something like to be able to relax into it. Don't be rushing it. So that's your Made with Love embroidered now. Okay, all done, and looks well at that. and it's just a matter of position. Sometimes you might feel it has got a little wrinkles in that, but it does flatten itself out when you put it on the card. As I say, you can put it on that card, or if you want to decorate one of your own postcards, again, you can position it on that as well and stitch it onto it, and then you have your postcard. But you can make your own postcard writing at the back here then as well. Of course, you have your prepaid one from them Post, which is lovely, and a great gift to have too as well. So I've just finished off with a little bow with a couple of little colours, a little strand, again that sort of length, with the greens and the whites, and that as well from what we were doing there in the pinks. So we get the couple of colours there and cut them. So I threaded them all through the needle, a lot of them, okay, and I literally just went through in the little spot there, okay, and pulled it out, okay. So it's literally through there like that, and you have all your colours, so it's only a matter of tying your bow. Now, of course, maybe you might have a different twist on it too. You might have your own idea, put something else on it, or you might have a little jewel or something at home that might look nice on it too, and that. But I think the bow is nice and pretty and small and dainty, and then you can trim it up to whatever you want, then whatever length of thread and stuff that you want to. Okay, so that's that one done, and we literally need to stitch it on again on top there. So it's literally the same size as that. So we'll go back to the machine again. Now we can change the thread. I had pink on this one around, but I'm going to stick with the white actually on this one as well. And literally just a little bit of a stitch. Change the stitch if you want as well. Put two pieces on top of each other, one on top of the other, and just go for it. And they are the same size, so they will fit. Near the edge, you don't have to be right on top of the edge, because you might want to give a little skim with the scissors just to kind of even up. There might be a fraction of discrepancy just along the edges, of course, with the tightening of some of the stitching from the embroidery and that, and then of course some of the threads maybe from the organza as well just might be looming out there as well. So we can just tidy up ever so slightly just here and there, and there's a few organza threads there and that as well. So literally that's that one there done. Okay, and it's the same process then of course for your next one. So it's the same process for the next one, which is this one here, but I mean you can do any sort of different variation. I had on this one now, I just left it a little bit different, and I had folded it over and I hadn't cut it, okay. So I had folded over my card, and I actually put on my little labels, of course, the Made with Love labels, which are a nice touch. Of course, you can add that to your to this one here as well if you want to add your little Made to Love on the end, because you have it already Made to Love there, or if you want to add it on the back of it as well, whatever you would want to do it. But I have it on the inside my card here. You could do the same with this one again, and it's just a slightly different embroidery and different. Now I had started this one, I had done the organza on it, so literally what you would do is do the very same, get your piece, trace around your 1.5 centimeters in, all the way around, cutting, putting on your bond of web and putting on your organza to make your frame, which I've done here, and then literally when you have it all embroidered, you're putting it on and stitching it onto one side. Okay, now the embroidery on this particular one that I have done, of course, is from here. Again, I have it on here, the little rose, again traced through, okay, on here, like what we did in there. All right, and I'll just trace it through on this one now, just to give you an idea, just down in the corner. So that's our little rose that I have done on the other one. And then from, what was I had written on that one, from our home to yours, of course, and we can put that on it as well. So I'll just write that into it before I show you how to do the other than the but you can write your own message. It's certainly lovely to write whatever message you want. It could be a birthday card or whatever it is, or write somebody's name. It's something you can do all year round. And you know what it is from the idea, is not my own idea, of course. It's an idea from the refugee ladies from World War I who had made them for the soldiers, and they were called World War I silks. and that's what these were called. And they embroidered them and given to the soldiers to send back to their family. And it was a lovely keepsake, certainly. And I remember finding one in an old house locally with a friend of mine one time and coming across it. And I was fascinated by them, and I'm sure they're in the attic at home somewhere. And it was actually to give me the idea. Actually, that's where I would have got the idea from. Now this one, of course, has a little bit of lace on it. Okay, so all it is just stitched on from corner to corner over the top, and then we have the 2 little flowers then on it as well. So I'll just show you how to stitch that on. I have it stitched on in white, what you need, and if you want to give it a pin, just pin it in place, of course, with the organza. And I would just run a stitch on that just so it won't move. All right, so just an ordinary straight stitch with a 2.5 length of stitch, ordinary, and literally on the top of that. Done. And you can trim off what you don't need then, of course, as well. And you have that little bunting effect or little lace on it as well. And we have 2 little flowers, and then of course then we're finishing it off. I have it finished off with a red around the edges and red thread, so it's just kind of bringing out that little bit of red. And we can just cut your 2 little flowers and put one either side and do a little red center in each one of those. Okay, now the stitch on these ones is the very same as what we've done on that. It's literally the 2 threads of, now I have some of the single threads sent out to people as well. So 2 lots of those little single thread, or taking 2 strands off your embroidery thread, and then just doing a little running stitch, and of course bringing your threads across from letter to letter from the bottom. Okay, here a little back stitch that you can use on the rows, because sometimes, and keeping again the thread only 2 layers for that as well. But you could do it a different color. I have red sent out to some, but I mean certainly if you had a different color you could do that as well, you know. And then it's finished off then onto your card then, ready to send off to whoever you like with your own message and stuff on it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Now that's our embroidered silk postcards and cards. They're done. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Certainly I enjoyed doing it with you, and the best of luck. Certainly I'd love to see all the different designs that you come up with, whether for all the celebrations that might come up in your family, or even just to sending love. That's what it's all about. As I say, just a little note, and they're a lovely keepsake to have. I'm sure people won't discard these. These will be framed and kept, and I hope so too. And look out for our next month's crafts then as well for March. Okay, take care. Bye bye.